You brought up a good point about just the speed of news these days. From my perspective, in 1988, when all of this happened to my family, breaking news was actually truly breaking news. Like, my mother was watching a soap opera when a news anchor came in and interrupted the program. And today there's no such thing really as breaking news, right? Because it's always on all the time. But the 24/7 cycle, there is still spot news. There are still things like terrorist attack. There are still things that happen that you need to respond to quickly. How do you think the advent of social media and the advent of even just smartphones, where people are on the ground, before journalists can even get there, how do you think that has impacted the coverage of spot news events like terrorism?
I think it's been a double-edged sword. It's been good in many ways, in that it's brought people into the gathering of news who otherwise wouldn't have been involved. People can see something, they can contribute that information to everybody on either Facebook or Twitter or some other social platform. So from that standpoint, it's wonderful. It's opened up the aperture, if you will. It's even wider than it was, because it's not, you don't just have to have a reporter with a notebook standing there writing about it in order to make it into the New York Times or the PBS NewsHour or, NPR radio. It can be an ordinary American citizen who sees something and reports on it faithfully, accurately. But it's also, it's a double-edged sword, because it's also sped things up so much that I know often accuracy goes out the window. Information gets shared that hasn't been vetted, that hasn't been checked out, that hasn't been put in context. And so today you have, people who see something, hear something on one of their feeds, and they think it's the gospel truth when it hasn't been checked out. Nobody's double checked it. Nobody's looked into it. Nobody's picked up the phone to verify it or talk to someone, which is what journalists do. I mean, it's our job to check things out. I mean, it used to be the ironclad rule. You didn't put a story on the air unless you had two hard sources to confirm it. I would have somebody, when I covered the Georgia State Capitol, tell me something, but I couldn't report it unless I had it confirmed by two sources. So long story short, it's good. It's democratized information with a small d, but it's also made it tougher and to determine, the truth. I mean, the facts from what's not the facts. Mm-hmm. It's made our job harder, and it's put more of a responsibility on you, the news consumer, to figure out, what can I trust, what can I believe, and what should I be skeptical about.